Welcome back to Solentha Stories. Let's fuel your day with some intense passion and non-stop excitement. Grab your gear, we're moving into the story now.
My husband sold my $2 million ranch to his new girlfriend for $5. He thought I'd cry and walk away quietly. Tad, I smiled. He had no idea what I'd already done, long before he made his move. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of a woman who's already won. Lisa Hawthorne cornered me in the feed store parking lot, waving papers like victory flags. Just wanted to thank you for the ranch, she said, loud enough for other customers to hear. $5 was more than generous. She held up the deed transfer, my forged signature bold across the bottom. Samuel sat in her Mercedes, avoiding my eyes through the tinted glass. I loaded 50-pound grain bags into my truck bed, each lift steady and controlled, while she kept talking about her plans for my land. The feed store owner, Tom, watched from his doorway, confusion clear on his weathered face. Going to convert those old stables into a yoga studio, Lisa continued, her voice carrying across the gravel lot. Samuel says you won't mind clearing out by Monday. Before we continue, if you believe that hardworking women deserve to protect what they've built with their own hands, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach others who need these stories. Monday. 3 days to leave the ranch I'd built from nothing. I hefted another grain bag, the familiar weight grounding me while my mind raced. The signature on her papers looked like someone had traced my name with their non-dominant hand during an earthquake. 20 years of signing breeding certificates, veterinary forms, and supply orders. You'd think Samuel would know how I actually write my name. Tom Murphy stepped out from his doorway, approaching slowly. He'd sold me my first bag of feed when I was 25, fresh from my father's funeral, using his life insurance money to buy 2,300 acres of scrubland everyone said was worthless. Everything all right, Lily? His eyes moved between Lisa's triumphant face and my steady loading. Just fine, Tom. I positioned another bag, the rough fabric familiar, under my work gloves. Lisa here was explaining how she bought my ranch. Bought. Tom's weathered face creased deeper. But you just ordered winter supplies for $5, Lisa interrupted, shoving the papers toward him. Legal and binding. Samuel handled everything. That's when I noticed Samuel's hand on the door handle, like he might get out, then thinking better of it. 18 years of marriage and he couldn't even face me while stealing everything I'd built. The cowardice hurt more than the betrayal somehow. Lisa's phone rang. She answered with a giggle that belonged on a teenager, not a 40-year-old woman. Yes, baby, I'm telling her now. She held the phone toward me. Samuel wants to talk to you. I took my time walking to my truck's tailgate, closing it with careful precision. Tell him he knows where to find me. The last grain bag loaded, I climbed into my truck without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I saw Tom examining the papers Lisa had pushed at him, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust. He'd been in business long enough to recognize garbage when he saw it. The drive back to the ranch took 12 minutes. I'd made this trip so many times I could navigate it unconscious. Past the Henderson place where their new foal was learning to run. Around the bend where lightning had split that massive oak 5 summers ago. Up the hill that overlooked the valley I'd spent 2 decades transforming from neglected land into something beautiful. Elena's truck was parked by the barn when I arrived. My ranch manager for 12 years, she had instincts sharper than any horse. She emerged from the barn holding a clipboard, but her eyes were on my face. Lily. Just my name, but the way she said it carried questions. Lisa Hawthorne claimed she bought the ranch. For $5. Elena's expression didn't change, but her knuckles went white on the clipboard. That explains Samuel loading his things into a rental truck this morning. Thought you knew. This morning. While I was training the yearlings in the back pasture, he'd been packing. Planning his escape while I worked the horses, unaware my world was being dismantled box by box. Show me, I said. We walked to the house. My house, built with my hands and my father's insurance money. The office door stood open. His desk drawers were empty, the file cabinet ransacked. But Samuel was an idiot if he thought the important papers were in obvious places. Elena followed me to the kitchen where I reached behind the refrigerator for the old coffee tin wrapped in plastic. Inside were the real documents, the original deed in my name alone, the receipts from every improvement, the breeding records that proved the bloodlines I'd developed. And something else. A hotel receipt from 3 weeks ago I'd found in Samuel's jacket. Riverside Hotel, champagne room service for 2 with a handwritten note. Can't wait for our new beginning, L. You knew? Elena asked, looking at the receipt. I suspected. Found this when he claimed to be at the Dallas cattle auction. I folded it carefully, returned it to the tin. But suspicion and proof are different things. My phone buzzed. Margaret, Samuel's sister, calling for the 3rd time this week. I'd been ignoring her, but now I answered. Lily, thank God. Her voice was strained. I've been trying to warn you. Samuel's been asking me about property law, about how to transfer deeds. He thinks because you let him handle the taxes he has some claim. I told him that's not how it works, but... He already tried, Margaret. Filed something at the courthouse. A long pause. Lily, you need a lawyer. Now. After she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd served Samuel breakfast this morning, unaware he was planning to steal everything by lunch. Elena sat across from me, quiet but present. Marcus Fitzgerald, I said finally. He handled my father's estate, helped me buy this place. His number's in the tin too. While Elena called Marcus, I walked through my house, seeing it with new eyes. The walls I'd painted, the floors I'd refinished, the windows I'd replaced one at a time as money allowed. In the living room hung our wedding photo, both of us young, hopeful, standing in front of the old barn before I'd rebuilt it. Samuel's smile looked genuine then. When had it become performance? Marcus could see me tomorrow afternoon. Until then, I had horses to feed, stalls to clean, and a ranch to run. Whatever Samuel and Lisa thought they'd accomplished with their $5 fiction, the real work didn't stop. It never had, not through drought or flood or market crashes. It wouldn't stop now. That evening I stood in Midnight Star's stall, checking on our pregnant mare. She'd been restless for 3 days, showing signs of a difficult pregnancy ahead. I ran my hands along her sides, feeling the full shift within. Life went on, preparing to enter the world regardless of human drama. We're going to be fine, I told her, though I wasn't sure which of us I was trying to convince. I've built this place once from nothing. If I have to, I'll fight to keep it. The mare nuzzled my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. Outside, the sun set over pastures I'd seeded, fences I'd mended, and dreams some fool thought he could steal for $5. Tuesday arrived wrapped in ordinary sounds. The coffee maker gurgling its final drops, bacon popping in the cast iron skillet my mother had seasoned for 40 years. I was slicing tomatoes from the garden when I heard Samuel's dress shoes on the hardwood instead of his usual work boots. He stood in the doorway wearing his charcoal suit, the one reserved for funerals and bank meetings. We need to talk. He didn't move toward the coffee pot like every other morning for 18 years. No kiss on my cheek, no complaint about the heat, no question about which horses needed attention. I kept slicing, the knife moving through red flesh with practiced precision. Your breakfast is almost ready. I won't be staying for breakfast. He pulled out his usual chair but remained standing behind it, gripping the back like a podium. I'm leaving you, Lily. For Lisa Hawthorne. The name wasn't a surprise. I'd seen it on that hotel receipt, heard it whispered in his sleep. But the next words were, the ranch is already sold. $5. Filed yesterday at the courthouse. He slid papers across the table, avoiding the wet ring from my coffee mug. The documents looked official enough. County seal, notary stamp, all the decorations of legitimacy. But the signature meant to be mine looked like someone trying to forge a check while riding a mechanical bull. You can't sell what isn't yours, Samuel. It's done. Community property laws. My name's on the tax documents. I turned off the stove, moved the bacon to a plate lined with paper towels. Ordinary movements while my mind catalogued 20 years of paperwork he'd never bothered to read. The deed in my name alone. The inheritance laws that protected what I'd bought with my father's money. The hours of labor I'd documented building this place before we'd even met. When did you plan this? My voice stayed level, professional almost. Does it matter? Lisa's coming by to look at her property. You should pack. That's when we heard the Mercedes pulling up the gravel drive, its engine too quiet for ranch country where trucks announce themselves with honest noise. Through the window, I watched Lisa Hawthorne step out like she was arriving at a photo shoot. Cream-colored pants that would last 30 seconds in a barn. Heels sinking into gravel I'd spread myself last spring. A silk scarf that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. She walked through my front door without knocking. Oh good, you're both here. She surveyed my kitchen like an appraiser, her nose wrinkling slightly at the bacon smell. I want to see everything. Starting with the master bedroom. I stayed at the counter watching this woman navigate my home in shoes meant for marble floors. The bedroom's upstairs. Mind the third step, it creaks. We'll be fixing that, she announced, already climbing. This whole place needs updating. Samuel, come show me our closet. Our closet. He followed her up the stairs while I stood in my kitchen, listening to her heels overhead, marking territory in rooms where I'd nursed him through pneumonia, held him after his father died, celebrated the good years before they turned. Elena appeared at the back door, taking in the scene with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. Saw the Mercedes. Everything okay? Samuel sold the ranch to his girlfriend. For $5. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Marcus, no. Meeting him tomorrow. I'm texting him now. Emergency basis. She kept typing while Lisa's voice drifted down the stairs, planning to tear out the bathroom I'd retiled by hand, install something more contemporary. They descended 15 minutes later, Lisa chattering about paint colors while Samuel carried her purse. We'll need you out by week's end, she told me, like discussing a dinner reservation. Samuel says you have somewhere to go? Samuel says a lot of things. Elena stepped forward, all 5'4" of her radiating the quiet threat of someone who'd faced down charging bulls. The horses need tending. You planning to learn? Lisa laughed, a tinkling sound that belonged in a cocktail lounge. Oh, we're selling those beasts. Converting the stables to an event space. Much more profitable. Those beasts. Bloodlines I'd spent 2 decades developing. Horses whose genealogies I could recite like family trees because they were family. We're going to town, Samuel announced, his hand on Lisa's back. To introduce her to everyone. They left in her Mercedes, leaving dust on everything I'd cleaned yesterday. Elena and I stood in the sudden silence, processing the surreal morning. Those papers won't hold, she said. I know. But the damage he's doing in town will be his to live with. By 11 my phone started ringing. First Martha Henderson, whose property bordered mine. Honey, is it true? Tom Murphy just called saying Samuel's at the store with some woman claiming she owns your place. Then Ben Williams from the bank. Lily, there's some confusion here about a property transfer. Can you come in? Finally, old veterinarian Doc Hendricks. Just had the strangest encounter with Samuel and a blonde woman. They're telling everyone you're having some kind of breakdown. What's really going on? Each call was a small humiliation, my private catastrophe becoming public entertainment. But the worst was yet to come. My phone screen lit up with Katie's face. My daughter, away at college, the one pure thing Samuel and I had created together. Her voice was thick with tears before I even said hello. Mom, what are you doing? No greeting, just accusation. Katie. Dad called. He says you're trying to destroy his happiness, that you won't accept the divorce, that you're making up lies about the ranch. Each word was a separate wound. Samuel had reached her first, painted his picture on a blank canvas. He says you're having some kind of breakdown, that he's worried about you but you won't get help. Katie, none of that is true. Then why is he saying it? Why would he lie? Because that's what he does now, I wanted to say. But poisoning her against her father, even a father doing wrong, wasn't my way. Come home this weekend. I'll show you everything. I have a study group. Please. The word cracked, showing more vulnerability than I'd intended. Just come home. Let me explain in person. Her paws stretched across miles of wire and doubt. Hey. But Mom, if you're really having problems, you need to admit it. Get help. After she hung up, I sat at the table where I'd served thousands of meals, helped with homework, celebrated birthdays. The bacon had gone cold, grease congealing white on the plate. Through the window, I could see the horses in the pasture, unaware their fate was being discussed in town by people who thought them beasts. Elena placed a cup of fresh coffee in front of me. She'll understand when she sees the truth. Will she? Her father's version is simpler. Mother gone crazy is easier to believe than father committing fraud. Kids figure out their parents eventually. Truth has a way of surfacing. I hoped she was right. But for now I had a ranch to run, horses to tend, and a life to protect from people who thought they could buy it for pocket change. The morning had shattered plenty, but I was still standing in the pieces, figuring out how to reassemble them into something stronger. The credit card statement arrived buried in Thursday's mail, tucked between feed store flyers and auction notices. I almost tossed it unopened. Samuel handled our personal finances while I managed the ranch accounts. But his name on that storage facility charge stopped me cold. Ace Storage billing monthly for 6 months. Unit 47B. I drove there that afternoon telling Elena I needed supplies from town. The facility sat on the outskirts, rows of orange doors baking in the sun. The manager, a kid barely out of high school, recognized me from the ranch's community writing program. "Mrs. Brennan. Here to check your husband's unit." "Lost my key," I lied smoothly. He cut the lock without question, probably violating 10 policies. The door rolled up to reveal Samuel's secret archive. Banker's boxes labeled in his blocky handwriting. I pulled out the first one with steady hands. Inside were breeding records, our breeding records, but the sales figures were wrong. Thunder's Pride's offspring, which sold for $50,000, showed as $15,000. Documentation for bloodlines I'd developed over decades, all with altered numbers. A second set of books for ranch accounts showing massive losses where I knew we'd profited. Then I found the letters. Lisa's handwriting was flowery, almost teenage. 2 years of correspondence I'd been too busy or too trusting to notice. "Can't wait until we can stop pretending," one read. "That derby party plan is perfect. Get her drunk, get her signature, we're free." The derby party. 2 years ago, Samuel had been so attentive, refilling my wine glass, insisting I relax for once. I'd woken with the worst hangover of my life and no memory of signing anything. Now I understood why he'd been so pleased with himself that night. I photographed every document, every letter, every falsified record. My phone storage filled as evidence mounted, years of deception documented in Samuel's own writing. The last box contained receipts for jewelry I'd never received, vacation charges from trips he'd taken without me, restaurant bills from dates while I was working late. Back at the ranch, Elena waited in the barn office, her expression carved from stone. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind me. "I should have told you sooner." She pulled out a folder she'd hidden in the supply cabinet. 3 months ago, Samuel met with Jack Morrison about buying Thunder's Pride. Said you'd agreed to sell but were too emotional to handle negotiations. Thunder's Pride, our foundation stallion, whose bloodline I'd spent 15 years perfecting. I told Morrison you'd never sell. He backed off, but then Samuel started approaching collectors for breeding documentation. Claimed horses had died or been traded. She spread papers across the desk. Copies of emails, falsified death certificates, forged sales agreements. I've been documenting everything, making copies before he could destroy originals. "Why didn't you tell me?" I kept hoping I was wrong. That there was an explanation. Her voice cracked slightly. "You seemed happy. I didn't want to be the one who... You protected the ranch. That's what matters." Together we traced the money trail. Phantom veterinary bills for procedures never performed, medications never purchased. Dr. Hendrick's signature forged dozens of times. The total approached $400,000 over 3 years. "There's more," Elena said quietly. "Last month while you were at the breeders' conference, Lisa was here. In your house. I have security footage from the barn cameras. That night, unable to sleep, I remembered something. The cloud storage account I'd set up years ago for ranch documents, back when Samuel claimed he wanted to help more with the business. He'd forgotten I had administrator access. I opened my laptop at 2 a.m., logging into the account with credentials he'd never bothered to change. Their text messages synced automatically from his phone. 2 years of conversations sprawled before me. "She actually thinks I'm working late," Samuel had written. "So pathetic." "The stupid cow probably doesn't even know what the ranch is really worth," Lisa replied. Every plan detailed. Every lie celebrated. Mockery of my morning routines, my dedication to the horses, my trust in the man I'd married. Photos of them together at restaurants I thought he'd visited with clients. Pictures from a Cabo vacation during what he'd called a business conference. Then I found it. A photo that knocked the breath from my lungs. Them together in my bed in my grandmother's quilt, while I was at the Kentucky Horse Show last spring. Lisa's caption, "Her bed is more comfortable than mine." I ran to the bathroom, emptying my stomach until nothing remained but bile and rage. Not just betrayal, desecration of every sacred space I'd built. Marcus Fitzgerald answered his phone at 6 a.m., alert despite the hour. "Lily, I've been reviewing the documents Elena sent. There's something you need to know." We met at his office within the hour. He'd pulled county records dating back to my purchase of the ranch. "The deed is entirely in your name. Your father's life insurance paid for it before you married Samuel. But his name is on tax documents only. For filing purposes. He has zero legal claim to the property itself." Marcus pulled out another folder. "Remember the Derby party 2 years ago? That party again." Vaguely. "I drank too much. Samuel had you sign something that night. He probably thought it was power of attorney or property transfer." Marcus smiled grimly. "But you signed a postnuptial agreement I'd prepared months earlier and left in your desk. It states that in case of divorce the ranch remains solely yours." "I don't remember." "Doesn't matter. It's legal, filed, and ironclad. Samuel signed it too, probably thinking it was something else after his own drinks." He pulled out the document, both signatures clear despite slightly wavering lines. "He accidentally protected you from himself. What about the money he stole? We'll file liens against the property for unpaid labor, 20 years of ranch development at market rates. Between that and the embezzlement we're looking at $1.8 million in claims. Even if his fake sale was legal, which it isn't, the liens would prevent any transfer." I sat in Marcus's leather chair, surrounded by evidence of betrayal so complete it should have destroyed me. Instead I felt something else. Clarity. Every suspicious moment, every instinct I'd suppressed, every excuse I'd made for Samuel's behavior had been warning signs I'd chosen to ignore. "File everything," I told Marcus. "Every lien, every charge, every piece of paper that protects what I built. This could get ugly. Criminal charges. It's already ugly. Now we make it legal." Elena was feeding the horses when I returned. She looked up from Thunder's Pride's stall. This stallion Samuel had tried to sell behind my back. "How bad?" she asked. 2 years of planning. $400,000 stolen. Photos in my bed. She absorbed this, then returned to brushing Thunder's Pride with steady strokes. "But the ranch was never his to sell." The stallion nickered softly and I realized something. While Samuel and Lisa had schemed and stolen, I'd been building something real. Every foal born, every acre improved, every young rider taught. That was my true fortune. And no $5 deed, no matter how many times they filed it, could steal what was already mine. The next morning I woke at 4:30 as always, made coffee in the same pot I'd used for 20 years, and started my rounds like nothing had changed. The horses needed feeding whether my world was falling apart or not. Samuel found me in the barn, mucking stalls with the rhythm of someone who'd done it 10,000 times before. "You're taking this well," he said, suspicion creeping into his voice. I kept shoveling. "Taking what well?" "The sale. The divorce. Everything. Life goes on, Samuel. Horses still need care." He watched me work, probably expecting tears or anger or begging. Instead I whistled softly, the tune I always used to calm nervous yearlings. By the third stall he left, unnerved by my normalcy. That afternoon Marcus's investigator, a quiet man named David Park, arrived disguised as a potential student for riding lessons. While I showed him around the arena, he planted recording devices smaller than buttons in the kitchen, living room, and office. "Legal in our state for a property owner, protecting against fraud. Act completely normal," he instructed. "Let them hang themselves with their own words." So I did. I packed Samuel's lunch each morning, turkey sandwiches with the crusts cut off, just how he liked them. Washed his clothes, folded them precisely. Even ironed his shirts, though he'd been wearing them to see Lisa. The familiar domestic routines became a performance, and I played my part perfectly. Thursday evening, Samuel brought Lisa to dinner. In my house. At my table. "Hope you don't mind," he said, though clearly he didn't care. Lisa wanted to see the kitchen in evening light. I served pot roast, the recipe his mother had taught me. Set the table with everyday plates, not the good china. That would seem bitter. Poured water for everyone, kept my movements steady and calm. Lisa talked through the entire meal about her renovation plans while sitting in the chair where Katie had done homework for 12 years. "We're thinking marble countertops," she announced, gesturing at my worn butcher block that had seen 2 decades of family meals. "And definitely removing that wall for an open concept." "Interesting choice," I replied, passing the potatoes. Samuel watched me carefully, looking for cracks. Finding none, he grew bolder. "You should be grateful Lily didn't fight the sale," he told Lisa, right there at my table. "She knows she couldn't have managed this place alone anyway." Every word recorded by David's devices. Every admission of their scheme preserved digitally. Friday afternoon, Katie's car pulled into the drive. I watched from the window as she sat in her vehicle for a full minute, gathering courage to face her unstable mother. When she finally emerged, her face carried the exhaustion of someone forced to choose sides. "Mom." Just one word, but loaded with doubt. "Your room's ready. Fresh sheets." She followed me inside, stiff and formal like a stranger. In the kitchen, she set down her bag carefully, studying me for signs of the breakdown her father had described. "Dad says you're not accepting reality. Sit down, Katie." I spread the evidence across the table methodically. The forged signatures. The bank statements showing theft. The storage unit photos. Her father's text messages mocking my stupidity. Lisa's cruel comments about my work with the horses. Katie's hands shook as she read. When she reached the photo of them in my bed, she shoved the papers away and ran to the bathroom. I heard her getting sick, the same reaction I'd had. Later we sat on the porch swing, the one I'd hung when she was 3. The chains creaked with familiar rhythm as she leaned against my shoulder. "How are you so calm?" she whispered. "You remember when you were 8 and that mare kicked you?" She nodded. "You got back up, walked to the barn and got back on. No crying, no drama. You said fear would make the horses nervous. This is different. No, sweetheart. Patience is what separates trained horses from wild ones. Your father's acting wild right now. I'm staying trained." She was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry I doubted you. He's your father. You wanted to believe him." By Saturday, the town had chosen sides. At the feed store, half the customers offered sympathy for my situation, while the other half avoided eye contact. Martha Henderson whispered loudly to her sister about how some women drive their men away with neglect. Lisa had started an Instagram account, Ranch Life Dreams. Photos of her posing with my horses, calling them her babies. One caption read, "So blessed to start this new chapter. Country life suits me." The comments section filled with congratulations from people who didn't know she'd stolen it for $5. The Wilkins family, who'd bought horses from me for 15 years, canceled their monthly training session. "Just until things settle," they said, but I knew what they meant. Drama was bad for business. Only Elena, Doc Hendricks, and surprisingly Tom Murphy from the feed store stood firmly in my corner. "Known you since you were 12, Tom said when I tried to thank him. "I know what you built and who built it." Sunday morning brought Samuel's worst escalation. I returned from the morning horse auction to find new locks on my house doors. My key wouldn't turn. "Samuel." I called through the door. "My medication is in there. My clothes." "Should have thought about that before being difficult," he called back. "There's a motel in town." The barn tack room had an old army cot from when we'd had a sick horse requiring overnight monitoring. I set it up next to the saddle racks, using horse blankets for bedding. That night, I lay listening to the horses breathing, their occasional snorts and shifts more comforting than any human conversation. Elena found me there Monday morning, bringing coffee and fresh clothes from her truck. "This is insane. You need to call the police." "No. Marcus says let them think they're winning." The recorder in the kitchen caught him admitting the locks were to force me out of my legal residence. More evidence. He studied my face. "You're playing a longer game. Samuel taught me chess years ago. He always forgot. The queen is the most powerful piece, but she knows when to wait." Lisa arrived that afternoon with a measuring tape and fabric samples, walking through my house like she owned it while I watched from the barn door. She held curtain swatches to my windows, planned where to put her yoga studio. Samuel stood behind her, hands on her waist, performing happiness for my benefit. They thought they'd won. Thought my silence meant surrender. They couldn't see the trap closing, couldn't hear the recordings accumulating, couldn't imagine that a woman who'd built a ranch from nothing might know how to protect it. That night in the tack room, surrounded by leather and hay, I smiled in the darkness. The storm was coming, but I was already sheltered. They were the ones standing exposed, too arrogant to notice the clouds building on the horizon. The scream that tore through the barn at 2 a.m. wasn't human. It was Midnight Star, and I knew that sound. A mare in serious trouble. I stumbled from my cot in the tack room, my back aching from sleeping on canvas stretched over metal, and found her down in her stall, sides heaving with contractions that weren't progressing right. Easy, girl. Easy. I ran my hands along her swollen belly, feeling for the foal's position. Wrong. Everything was wrong. The baby was turned, maybe tangled. I grabbed my phone to call Doc Hendricks, then remembered. No service. Samuel had suspended my line yesterday. Elena's number was programmed into the barn's landline. She answered on the second ring, alert despite the hour. Midnight's in trouble. Bad presentation. Calling Doc now, she said and hung up. 20 minutes felt like hours. Midnight Star's eyes rolled white with pain, her legs thrashing against the stall walls. I held her head, singing the lullaby Katie loved as a baby, trying to keep us both calm. Doc Hendricks arrived with Elena right behind him. He took one look and started pulling equipment from his truck. Foal's got a leg back. We need to move fast. I'll cover the bill, Elena said quietly, pulling out her credit card before Doc could ask about payment. We both knew what Samuel had done to my accounts. For the next 2 hours, we worked in that ancient dance of birth and possible death. Doc's arms disappeared inside the mare, manipulating the foal while I held Midnight steady and Elena managed equipment. The barn filled with the sounds of labor, heavy breathing, occasional groans, the rustle of straw. Got it, Doc finally said. Legs forward. Here we go. The foal emerged in a rush of fluid and motion. A black colt, perfect except for one white sock on his left rear leg. He lay still for a moment, then shuddered to life, lifting his impossible head on that impossibly thin neck. There you go, I whispered, clearing mucus from his nostrils. Welcome to the world, little one. Midnight Star turned to inspect her baby, nickering softly. Within an hour, the colt was standing on legs like stilts, searching for milk. As I watched him take those first wobbling steps, the thought hit me. This might be the last foal born here under my watch. Don't think like that, Elena said, reading my face. This place is yours. For now. Tuesday brought an unexpected visitor. James Whitman from First National Bank stood at the barn entrance, looking uncomfortable in his suit and shiny shoes. Mrs. Brennan, could we speak privately? Samuel appeared from nowhere, inserting himself between us. James. I told you on the phone Lily's not well. She's been making wild accusations. I'd like to hear from Mrs. Brennan directly, James said firmly. She's having delusions. Ask anyone in town. I've known Lily since she was a teenager. I knew her father. I'll judge her mental state myself. Samuel's jaw clenched, but he couldn't physically prevent a bank officer from speaking to me. James walked with me to the far paddock out of Samuel's earshot. The paperwork for this supposed sale, he said quietly, it doesn't look right. The signature, the price, none of it makes sense. Your father would roll over in his grave if I let someone steal what he provided for you. He handed me his private cell number. Call me. Not the bank, me directly. Something's very wrong here. Wednesday afternoon, I needed supplies from town. At Thompson's Western Wear, I was comparing prices on hay nets when Lisa's voice carried across the store. I need the finest equipment. Cost is no object. The ranch is generating plenty of income. She stood at the counter, arms full of premium leather goods. A $3,000 saddle. Crystal-studded bridles. Designer riding boots she'd destroy in one real day of ranch work. I'm converting the whole operation, she told the clerk, loud enough for everyone to hear. Those smelly quarter horses are going. I'm bringing in Arabians. Much more elegant for the luxury retreat I'm planning. Those quarter horses whose bloodlines I'd spent 20 years perfecting. Horses that had won championships, produced champions, saved troubled kids in our therapy program. He spotted me by the hay nets. Her smile spread like spilled oil. Lily. Still shopping here. She held up the saddle. Samuel says you never could appreciate fine things. Always too practical, too basic. I said nothing. Gary Thompson, the owner, walked over to ring up her purchases. He ran her credit card once, twice, then handed it back. Declined, he said flatly. That's impossible. Try again. Ma'am, it's declined. Do you have another form of payment? Lisa's face flushed crimson. This is ridiculous. I own the Brennan Ranch. The Brennan Ranch account is in Lily's name, Gary said, looking directly at me. Has been for 20 years. I don't know what game you're playing, but it won't work here. She stormed out, leaving the expensive items on the counter. Gary winked at me and went back to his office. Thursday started with pressure in my chest like someone sitting on my ribs. By noon, the pain had spread down my left arm. Elena found me gripping the stall door, trying to breathe through it. Hospital. Now. It's just stress. It's a heart attack waiting to happen. Get in the truck. The emergency room was too bright, too loud. They hooked me to machines that beeped accusations about my blood pressure, my heart rate, my stress levels. The doctor, a young woman who looked like Katie, frowned at the readings. You need to rest. Whatever's happening in your life needs to take second priority to your health. Horses don't feed themselves. They also can't feed themselves if you're dead. Samuel never showed up. But somehow within hours half the town knew I'd been hospitalized. His version spread faster than wildfire. Poor Lily's having a complete breakdown. Had to be sedated. Katie arrived as they were preparing my discharge papers, her face tight with fury. Dad's telling everyone you're psychotic. Let him talk. My phone buzzed. Marcus's name on the screen. Lily. The judge reviewed everything. Emergency hearing scheduled for Monday. Can you make it? I looked at the 4 in my arm, the monitors recording my every heartbeat, my daughter's worried face. I'll be there. Good. Because this ends Monday. One way or another. The nurse protested when I insisted on leaving. You need observation. I need to go home. You don't understand the risk. I understand perfectly. But that ranch has been my life for 20 years. If I'm going to have a heart attack, I'd rather have it there than here. Katie drove me back in silence. As we pulled up to the barn, the new colt was playing in the paddock, testing his legs with pure joy. Midnight Star watched protectively, occasionally calling him back when he strayed too far. Mom, Katie said softly. Whatever happens Monday, I'm with you. I squeezed her hand, watching that colt dance on legs still learning their purpose. 5 more days of waiting. 5 more days of letting Samuel and Lisa think they'd won. The weight of it sat on my chest heavier than any heart condition. But that colt gave me hope. New life always does. Monday arrived wrapped in low clouds that promised rain. I called Samuel that morning, my voice carefully neutral. I'm ready to discuss terms. Peacefully. Tonight, 7 o'clock, the Sterling room. Pause. I could hear Lisa whispering in the background. Terms. His voice carried suspicion. There's nothing to discuss. The sale is done. Then consider it a farewell dinner. Closure. Bring Lisa, she should be there. Another pause. More whispering. Fine. But no drama, Lily. No drama, I agreed. I arrived at the Sterling room at 6:30, choosing a table near the window where the entire dining room would have clear sight lines. The maitre d', Robert, who'd served our anniversary dinners for 15 years, raised an eyebrow at my request for water, not wine. Celebrating tonight, Mrs. Brennan? In a way, Robert. In a way. Marcus had arrived even earlier, positioning himself at the bar with his briefcase, nursing a club soda while pretending to read financial papers. Detective Rachel Morrison sat in a corner booth, just another diner enjoying soup and salad. David Park, the investigator, had a table by the kitchen, strategic positioning he'd called it. At exactly 7 they arrived. Lisa wore a black dress that tried too hard, and around her neck, my grandmother's pearls. The ones Samuel had claimed were stolen during our move last year. Seeing them on her throat made my hands tighten on my water glass, but I kept my expression pleasant. Lily. Samuel pulled out Lisa's chair with exaggerated courtesy. You look tired. Hospital stays will do that, I replied evenly. They ordered champagne, Veuve Clicquot, charged to what they assumed was their ranch account. Robert's eyes flicked to mine. I gave the slightest nod. Let them order whatever they wanted. To new beginnings, Samuel raised his glass, that smirk I'd once found charming now revealing itself as cruel. To endings, I countered, lifting my water. And truth. Lisa giggled, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Truth? That's rich, considering you've been living in denial for weeks. Have I? Let's discuss truth then. Like the truth about the Derby party 2 years ago. Samuel's champagne glass stopped halfway to his lips. You kept refilling my wine that night, I continued conversationally. I thought you were being attentive. But you needed me drunk, didn't you? For the papers. I don't know what. The papers you thought were property transfer documents. But you were drunk too, Samuel. You signed a postnuptial agreement instead. The one that guarantees the ranch stays mine in case of divorce. Lisa's giggle died. That's not possible. Then there's the storage unit. 6 months of rent, all those falsified breeding records. The love letters going back 2 years. I pulled out my phone, swiped to the cloud account. Your texts are particularly interesting, Lisa. I hit play on a voice message she'd sent Samuel 3 weeks ago. Her recorded voice filled the space between us. Just forge her signature already. She's too stupid to fight back. Once we file it, she'll roll over like always. Diners at nearby tables turned to stare. Lisa grabbed for my phone, but I pulled it back. Delete that. Why? It's my phone. My cloud account. My evidence. Samuel stood abruptly. We're leaving. I don't think so. Marcus approached our table with 3 folders and the practiced stride of a man about to destroy lives legally. Mr. Brennan, Ms. Hawthorne. I'm Marcus Fitzgerald, Mrs. Brennan's attorney. We know who you are, Samuel spat. Then you'll want to see these documents. Marcus placed the first folder on the table. The irrevocable trust that's protected the ranch for 6 weeks. Any sale without Mrs. Brennan's explicit, notarized consent is legally void. But I filed a fraudulent document. Which brings us to folder 2. He opened it, revealing bank statements, falsified veterinary bills, altered breeding records. $400,000 in embezzlement over 3 years. Federal crime, Mr. Brennan. Lisa shrank back in her chair. I didn't know about. Your signature is on several of these deposits, Marcus noted. And then there's folder 3. The IRS issue. What IRS issue? Lisa's voice climbed an octave. Your $5 purchase price. The IRS considers that a gift, not a sale. You owe gift tax on the full market value of the property. Approximately $600,000. Due immediately. That's insane. Samuel said. Samuel said a lot of things. Detective Morrison had left her booth, approaching our table with the measured pace of law enforcement. Mr. Brennan, Ms. Hawthorne, I'm Detective Morrison with the Financial Crimes Unit. The entire restaurant was watching now. Forks suspended midway to mouths, conversations dead, even the kitchen staff peering through the service window. This is entrapment. Samuel's voice cracked. No, sir. Entrapment would be if we convinced you to commit crimes you wouldn't have otherwise committed. You did this all on your own. Lisa's carefully applied makeup began running in black streams. You said it was legal. You said she was pathetic, that she'd never fight back. Shut up, Lisa. Don't tell me to shut up. This is your fault. Your plan. Your lies. She stood, grabbing her purse. I'm calling my lawyer. Ma'am, please remain seated, Detective Morrison said firmly. You can't make me. Actually, I can. You're being detained pending investigation of fraud, conspiracy, and filing false documents. The maitre d' approached apologetically. Perhaps we should move this to a private space? No need, I said quietly. They're leaving. Detective Morrison nodded to 2 uniformed officers who'd been waiting outside. They entered with the quiet efficiency of professionals, standing behind Samuel and Lisa's chairs. Mr. Brennan, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Lily, please. Samuel turned to me, his confidence finally cracking. We were married for 18 years. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything, I replied. Until you decided it meant nothing. As they were let out, Lisa's shriek pierced the restaurant. This is your fault, Samuel. You said she was too stupid to protect herself. The dining room remained frozen for several seconds after they left. Then, slowly, the normal sounds of dinner resumed, quieter now, charged with the electricity of witness drama. Robert approached with a piece of chocolate cake I hadn't ordered. On the house, Mrs. Brennan. That was quite a show. Marcus sat down across from me, allowing himself a small smile. The ranch is safe. The criminal charges will stick. And the IRS will definitely want their money from Ms. Hawthorne. What about the $5? Evidence. Though I doubt she'll want it back. I took a bite of cake, dark chocolate with raspberry filling. It was the first thing I'd truly tasted in weeks. Around me, other diners tried not to stare, but I caught several sympathetic nods, a few raised glasses in quiet salute. Detective Morrison returned briefly. We'll need you to come to the station tomorrow for a formal statement. Of course. After she left, I sat alone at the table where Samuel had proposed 20 years ago. The same table where we'd celebrated Katie's acceptance to college. Now it would be remembered as the place where his house of lies finally collapsed. The champagne they'd ordered still sat in its bucket, barely touched. Robert cleared it away without asking, along with any trace they'd been there at all. I left the restaurant through the kitchen exit, avoiding the clusters of diners still discussing what they'd witnessed. The drive home felt different, not lighter yet but shifted like the moment between thunder and rain when pressure finally breaks. Tuesday morning arrived with official summons. The courthouse at 9 sharp. I dressed carefully, not fancy, just respectable. The navy suit I'd worn to my father's funeral, pressed but not new. Katie met me at the courthouse steps, her face drawn but determined. You don't have to come in, I told her. Yes, I do. I need to see this through. The courtroom smelled of old wood and floor polish. Samuel sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit that made him look smaller, older. Lisa was beside him in street clothes, her attorney whispering urgently in her ear. Assistant District Attorney Sophia Klein stood with the confidence of someone holding a royal flush. She began methodically, laying out evidence like dealing cards face up on the table. Your Honor, we have documented proof of systematic embezzlement spanning 3 years. Bank statements appeared on the screen. $400,000 diverted through fraudulent veterinary bills. Samuel's attorney, a tired-looking man named Peterson, objected. This alleged evidence was obtained through entrapment. Mrs. Brennan deliberately. Objection overruled. The judge cut him off. The defendant's crimes began long before Mrs. Brennan took any protective action. Continue, Ms. Klein. The forged signatures came next. Side-by-side comparisons that would make a child laugh. Then the cloud account messages, each one more damaging than the last. The defendants discussed their plan in detail, Sophia explained, highlighting specific texts. Quote, get her drunk enough to sign anything. Quote, she's too trusting to check the paperwork. Quote, once it's filed she can't fight it. Lisa's attorney, Mr. Garrett, stood abruptly. Your Honor, may I have a moment with my client? They huddled briefly. When Garrett returned, his shoulders sagged. Your Honor, Ms. Hawthorne would like to discuss a plea arrangement. Abandoning ship already? The judge asked dryly. The evidence is overwhelming. Samuel twisted in his chair to stare at Lisa, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. Katie Brennan, Sophia called. My daughter walked to the stand with her chin up, though her hands trembled taking the oath. She looked directly at me, not her father, as she began speaking. He called me at school constantly. Said Mom was having a breakdown, that I needed to come home and convince her to sign papers. He promised to pay my tuition if I helped. Did you believe him? Sophia asked gently. At first. He's my father. Why would he lie? Katie's voice cracked. But then I came home and saw the evidence. The forged signatures. The stolen money. The texts calling my mother stupid. What else did you discover? Katie's jaw tightened. I went to his apartment last week to get some of my things from childhood. Lisa was there. She was wearing my grandmother's jewelry, pieces Dad said were stolen. And there were photos from their trips together when he was supposedly at business conferences. Samuel's attorney tried cross-examination. Isn't it true you're angry at your father for the divorce? I'm angry he tried to steal from the woman who actually raised me while he was running around with his girlfriend. Objection. It's not an objection if it's true, Katie shot back. The judge allowed himself a small smile. When Katie stepped down, she walked past Samuel's table without looking at him. She sat beside me, taking my hand. More witnesses followed. James Whitman from the bank explaining the suspicious paperwork. David Park, the investigator, presenting recordings from the house. Doc Hendricks, testifying about the forged veterinary bills. Lisa's new attorney, she'd fired Garrett during the lunch break, tried damage control. Ms. Hawthorne was manipulated by Mr. Brennan. She believed the sale was legitimate. Sophia produced Lisa's handwritten letters. Quote, "Once you get her signature, we're set." This was written 2 years ago. Ms. Hawthorne was planning this before she claims Mr. Brennan manipulated her. By afternoon, both defense attorneys looked defeated. Samuel's last-ditch effort was taking the stand himself. "Lily and I built that ranch together," he claimed. "I have a right to." "Mr. Brennan," the judge interrupted, "did you or did you not forge your wife's signature on a deed transfer? She would have signed if. Yes or no?" Samuel's mouth opened, closed. "Yes." "Did you steal $400,000 through fraudulent billing?" A longer pause. "Yes." The judge turned to Lisa. "Ms. Hawthorne, you're facing charges of conspiracy, fraud, and filing false documents. How do you plead?" Lisa stood slowly, mascara already running. "Guilty, Your Honor." But Samuel said, "What Mr. Brennan said is irrelevant. You participated knowingly in fraud." The sentencing was swift. Samuel received 18 months minimum security for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. Lisa got 2 years probation and restitution requirements that would drain her accounts for years. The IRS penalties alone would force her into bankruptcy. The property known as Brennan Ranch, the judge declared, is confirmed as the sole property of Lily Brennan. All liens are cleared. Any claims by the defendants are permanently void. The gavel fell with finality. Outside, the courthouse steps were crowded. Elena stood by her truck with a surprise. Midnight Star's black colt on a lead rope. "Thought he should see his home's really safe," she said. The colt nuzzled my hand, searching for treats. Such a simple gesture, but it broke something loose in my chest. Not tears. Those would come later. Just relief so profound my knees nearly buckled. Word traveled faster than wildfire. Within hours, Tom Murphy had hung a handwritten sign in his store window. "We stand with Lily Brennan, real ranch, real woman." My phone buzzed with messages. "The Hendersons, never doubted you for a second." "The Wilkins family, can we resume training next week?" Even Martha Henderson, who'd whispered about me in the feed store. "I'm sorry. I should have known better." The local newspaper photographer appeared, wanting a picture for their story. I stood with the colt while Katie held his lead rope. The headline would read, "Local rancher defeats fraud with grace." But grace had nothing to do with it. This was about preparation, patience, and protecting what was mine. That evening, casseroles began arriving. Tuna from the Pattersons. Lasagna from the church ladies. More food than Katie and I could eat in a month. Each dish an apology from people who'd chosen the wrong side. "You don't need their approval," Elena said, helping unload the 4th casserole delivery. "I know. But it's nice to have it back." Samuel would serve his 18 months. Lisa was already packing to leave town, her social media accounts deleted, her dreams of being a ranch owner dissolved into legal fees and tax penalties. Me. I stood in my kitchen, looking out at my land, my horses, my life restored. The black colt played in the pasture, legs still unsteady but growing stronger. Tomorrow I'd return to my normal routine. 4:30 wake up, coffee, barn chores. But tonight I'd allow myself this moment of victory. Justice had been served at exactly the right temperature. The morning after the trial, I woke without an alarm for the first time in 20 years. Not because I'd overslept. My internal clock still pulled me from bed at 4:30, but because the urgency was gone. The desperate need to protect, defend, survive had lifted, leaving something I barely recognized. Peace. 6 months can change everything. Or maybe it just reveals what was always there, waiting beneath the crisis. This morning, I stood on my porch with coffee that tasted like freedom, watching the sun paint familiar pastures in new light. The horses grazed in patterns I knew by heart, but something was different. They moved easier, less skittish. Animals sense tension in ways humans ignore. They knew before I did that the danger had passed. Elena emerged from the barn, no longer my employee but my partner. We'd made it official last month. 60/40th split, with her taking the 40 and the option to buy in further over time. "The therapy kids arrive at 9, she called out. 6 today. The therapeutic writing program. My dream for a decade, Samuel's veto for just as long. Waste of resources, he'd called it. Liability nightmare. Now twice a week children with disabilities came to find strength on horseback. Their parents paid what they could, insurance covered some, we absorbed the rest. Some things mattered more than profit. Katie's truck rumbled up the drive. She'd transferred from her expensive out-of-state college to the state school an hour away. Closer to home, she'd said, but I knew the truth. She wanted to be near the horses, near the healing. Weekends she worked alongside us, learning the business from the ground up. Mail's here, she said, tossing the bundle on the porch rail. Including something from Coleman Correctional. Samuel's careful handwriting on the envelope. I'd gotten 3 others over the months, all unopened, all burned. This one I opened not from curiosity but from a need to confirm what I already knew. Lily, it began. I wake up every day in a concrete box, remembering the wooden walls you and I built together. I hear metal doors slamming and remember the barn door that always stuck until you fixed it with cooking oil and patience. They serve instant coffee here that tastes like regret. He went on for pages. The morning routines he missed. The smell of hay. The sound of thunder's pride whinnying at dawn. How he'd destroyed everything real for something that turned out to be smoke. I know you'll never forgive me and you shouldn't. But I need you to know that I understand now what I lost. What I threw away. What I tried to steal but never actually owned. I read it through once, then walked to the burn barrel where we disposed of medical waste and expired medications. The paper caught quickly, his words turning to ash that lifted on the morning breeze. Some apologies come too late to matter. Some bridges, once burned, leave gaps that shouldn't be crossed again. From Dad? Katie asked, watching the last of it disappear. From a stranger who used to live here. She nodded, understanding. We'd had months of therapy together, unpacking the manipulation, the divided loyalties, the grief of losing the father she thought she knew. She was learning what I'd learned. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself for not seeing the truth sooner. Around noon, an unfamiliar car pulled up. Margaret Brennan stepped out, Samuel's sister, carrying a cardboard box that looked too heavy for her thin arms. I should have come sooner, she said without preamble. I was a coward. I took the box from her, gesturing toward the kitchen. She followed, taking in the changes. New paint where Lisa had measured for renovations, flower boxes under windows she'd planned to replace. I cleaned out Samuel's storage unit. The real one, not the secret one you found. Margaret pulled out photo albums, childhood pictures of Katie, our wedding album that I thought was lost. He was going to throw these away. Said they hurt too much to keep. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in tissue, my mother's recipe box filled with index cards in her careful script. The one Samuel claimed was water damaged in a basement flood that never happened. I knew about Lisa, Margaret said quietly. Saw them together last Christmas when he said he was visiting me. I should have told you. Why didn't you? Because I'm a coward, she repeated. And because I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe. She trailed off, then started again. He calls me from prison. Crying. Says he destroyed the only real thing he ever had. Good, I said and meant it down to my bones. She studied my face, maybe expecting hardness or bitterness. What she found was simpler. Acceptance. You're not going to forgive him. Forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same thing. I forgive him for my own peace. But he's not welcome in my life again. Ever. She nodded slowly. I understand. I just thought you should know he knows what he lost. After she left, I hung the new ranch sign Elena and Katie had commissioned as a surprise. Second Chances Ranch in wrought iron with a running horse silhouette beneath. Not for Samuel, he'd had his chances and burned them all. This was for the therapy kids who were told they'd never walk finding freedom on horseback. For the rescued horses given one more opportunity to matter. For women like me who learned that starting over at 45 wasn't an ending but a beginning. Lisa Hawthorne, I'd heard through the small-town grapevine, had moved back east. Working as a receptionist at a law firm, ironically. Still paying the IRS in installments that would follow her for a decade. Her Instagram dreams of ranch life deleted, replaced by the reality of consequence. As evening approached, I walked to Midnight Star's pasture. Her colt, 6 months old now and officially named Justice, trotted over on legs that had found their strength. He'd never known the fear that had lived here during those awful weeks. To him this place had always been safe, steady, sure. You were born into the storm, I told him, rubbing his neck. But look at you now. He nudged my pocket, searching for carrots with the single-minded determination of youth. Behind him, the sun set over land that had been paid for twice. Once with my father's life insurance and again with my refusal to let it be stolen. Katie found me there watching the light fade. You okay? More than okay. It's different now, isn't it? The ranch feels lighter. He was right. The same fences, same buildings, same horses. But the weight was gone. That constant vigilance, that underlying fear of betrayal. In its place, purpose, partnership, peace. My phone buzzed with tomorrow's schedule. 8 therapy students. A veterinary visit for vaccinations. Elena's meeting with a potential sponsorship for the therapy program. Life moving forward instead of defending against attack. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, mine alone now, with a cup of tea and the comfortable quiet of a house that held no secrets, no lies, no betrayals waiting to surface. Through the window, I could see the barn's security light illuminating the path I'd walk tomorrow at 4:30 a.m., same as always. Except nothing was the same. Everything was better. Cleaner. Truer. $5. That's what they thought my life's work was worth. But you can't buy what was never for sale. And you can't steal what someone's willing to fight for. The silence of my evening wasn't lonely. It was earned, peaceful, and completely mine.